I used to believe that secrets only destroy relationships, but sometimes the truth can destroy you even more. My name is Clara. I'm 32, and for 5 years I thought my marriage to Ryan was the kind of quiet happiness people write novels about. He wasn't flashy, not the kind to sweep me off my feet with grand gestures, but steady, reliable, the kind of man who showed love in the smallest ways: coffee on the counter every morning, a note tucked into my bag before work, his hand reaching for mine during traffic lights without even thinking. He worked in logistics, which meant constant travel. Airports, hotels, red-eye flights. We used to joke that he lived in time zones instead of cities. I trusted him completely. I had to. Otherwise, distance would have eaten me alive. That trust cracked the day I found a folded receipt in his jacket pocket. It was ordinary at first glance, just a crumpled slip of paper. But the address printed on it wasn't for a hotel or conference center. It was for a small medical clinic 2 towns over, an address he'd never once mentioned. He'd told me he was flying to Chicago that week, meeting clients, but this receipt said otherwise. I laughed it off for a day, told myself it was nothing, maybe a wrong jacket, maybe an honest mistake. But once doubt plants itself in your mind, it starts to grow in the dark. After that, I began noticing things I'd once ignored. His phone, which used to sit on the kitchen counter, was suddenly always in his pocket. He started stepping outside to take calls, lowering his voice in the doorway like he was hiding a secret. His business trips grew longer, explanations thinner. I smiled when he explained, pretended to believe him, because the alternative, the possibility that he was lying, felt unbearable. On a rainy Tuesday, while he was supposedly boarding a plane, I opened the Find My Phone app. The little blue dot blinked, not at an airport or a client's office, but at that same medical building from the receipt. My chest went tight. My hands trembled. I grabbed my keys and left before I could change my mind. I parked across the street and watched. People drifted in and out, patients wrapped in coats, a nurse hurrying past, a tired mother balancing a toddler. Then I saw him, Ryan. He wasn't in a suit or lugging a suitcase. He had a paper bag and a bouquet of flowers, his shoulders somehow heavier, as if the weight of something private pressed on them. A woman met him at the door, hair pulled back, eyes rimmed in tiredness. He hugged her, kissed her forehead. For a second, I felt like I'd been ripped out of my life and dropped in a place with no map. That night, I cooked dinner, smiled across the table, asked about his flight, and listened while he lied easily. Inside, I felt like glass. I told myself I needed proof, something undeniable. So I followed him again the next day, and the day after that. Each time he went back to the clinic. The same woman, the same quiet exchanges. I rehearsed confrontations in my head, imagined the words I'd hurl across the kitchen, but fear froze me. Fear of what I already suspected. On the third day, I went inside. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and quiet sorrow. My heartbeat thundered as I wandered the halls pretending to ask for directions. A chart taped to a door read, Anna Green, room 214. I knocked softly and pushed the door open. A small boy lay hooked to monitors, his face waxen but peaceful. A woman sat beside him, fingers curled around his hand like a lifeline. She looked up and, after a second shock, said quietly, "You must be Ryan's wife." My world tilted. The boy stirred and murmured, "Mommy, is that Daddy's friend?" That single word, Daddy, was a blade. Anna's story spilled from her like steam from a kettle. Years ago, before Ryan and I met, they had a brief relationship. She discovered she was pregnant after they split and chose to raise the child alone. The boy, Ethan, was born with a chronic illness that required constant care, treatment, and money she didn't have. The clinic, the appointments, the late-night calls, they had shredded her resources thin. Ryan found out by accident. He saw Ethan once and the resemblance hit him like lightning. Guilt filled him. He started helping, quietly, paying bills, bringing groceries, sitting in waiting rooms. He lied because he didn't know how to tell me without blowing up everything we'd built. He thought secrecy was a way to protect me from pain. When I finally confronted him that night, he didn't deny it. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table like strangers reading the same terrible news. His hands shook. "I wanted to tell you," he said in a voice so small I had to lean in to hear it. "I just didn't know how. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I carried it alone, I could spare you." My anger came first, hot, furious, incisive. "You don't get to decide I can't handle something," I said. "You built a lie and called it love." He cried. I did not. My tears came later in the car, with the rain and the dark. But beneath the anger, there was something else. An unexpected stubborn ache when I pictured the little boy on the monitors, a hand so small wrapped in tubes. It began to complicate the black and white picture I'd painted of him as a liar. We didn't divorce. We didn't pretend everything was fine either. Instead, we limped into an uneasy truce, a life built of small, brittle compromises. Some mornings, bronze resentment sat in my chest like a coin ready to fall. I woke with it burning. Other nights, when Ryan would return from the clinic smelling faintly of antiseptic and exhaustion, I found my heart folding in a way I hated, softening toward the man who was, in his own flawed way, trying to do right by a child. Anna came into our lives in tentative threads. A phone call, a thank you note, a small crooked drawing of a dinosaur left on our doorstep, Ethan's shaky handwriting on the back. She apologized until both of us felt sick of the word. Eventually, we met properly, in a cafe where Ryan sat like a man limping between two worlds. I remember that first face-to-face with Anna. She was smaller than I expected, as if life had bent her into someone practical, serious, mercilessly tired. Her voice was steady, but fragile. In the beginning, conversation hustled like cautious mice around a trap, everyone afraid of the wrong word. It wasn't simple. Forgiveness doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrives in the clumsy, often embarrassing smallest choices, agreeing to be in the same room, offering the first smile, choosing not to open his phone when it lit up at midnight. Slowly, unexpectedly, something shifted. Ethan began to trust me in small ways, pressing a sticker into my palm, asking me to read a page of a book, laughing at a joke only I understood because he'd heard it one evening when his mother fell asleep. I started to see Ryan differently, not as the man who had lied, but as a complicated human trying to repair a wrong, his shame like a heavy coat he couldn't take off. There were nights I hated him. There were nights I caught him feeding soup to Ethan, and his face was so tender I felt my resistance crack. We built a new kind of life, not the pristine fairy tale I'd imagined, but one that made room for the messy, inconvenient truth. We learned to live with a love that included other people's pain. It was far from clean, but in its own brittle way, it was real. I won't pretend it was easy. There were arguments that shredded the quiet. Friends took sides. Some couldn't understand why I stayed. There were moments of humiliation when I imagined what others might think if they knew. There were nights of long silence where the apartment felt like a house full of ghosts. And still, there were mornings when Ethan would press his entire small hand into mine like it was a promise. There were evenings when Anna would laugh at something stupid and her face would soften, and I'd see a woman who had been strong for too long. If you'd asked me then what I wanted, I would have said truth, a clean, simple truth. But life rarely gives you neat resolutions. The truth comes tangled and sharp, and your choices about it define you. I tell this story not to excuse deceit, but to show how human decisions are messy. People break you, sometimes while trying to do the right thing. Sometimes love survives, not because it is flawless, but because both people, slowly, imperfectly, decide to keep trying. Would I do it differently? Maybe. There are nights I wish I'd stormed out. There are moments I wish I'd demanded everything be laid bare. And there are also nights I'm grateful that a child's small smile smoothed the edges of my anger. Sometimes the hardest truth is the one that forces us to become kinder, even to those who broke us, and forgive ourselves too. What about you? Would you forgive or walk away? Tell me in the comments. And if this story touched you, subscribe for more, because the harsh truth is rarely easy, but sometimes it's the only truth worth facing.